Hey guys, Fazzy back here, and in today's video we have a tier list. And today's tier list is going to be due to NHL 25 is the first game that will now be available just on the current generation of consoles. So I wanted to go and take a look at all the games on the previous generation of consoles, and then kind of rank them here on a tier list anywhere from great to bad. This is more or less going to kind of be more focused toward franchise mode in those offline modes toward my rating, but we'll go through some of the biggest features added to each of those games, and I'll just throw in some of my personal feelings about each of these games. And credit to It Ain't Too Busy for giving me this idea in a comment here just from a video the other day. So with that being said, let's jump into this list and start with NHL 15, and instantly that goes into the bad. NHL 15 on the Xbox One and PS4 was an absolute mess. It should not have been released. They should have taken an extra year. It just seemed like it was really rushed. It was missing so many features. Franchise mode didn't even have a draft. There was no AHL in franchise mode. And it's funny, if you look at NHL 15 on old gen, you might say it's one of the best NHL games ever made. Just do it being basically NHL 14 2.0 with a roster update. It was the exact same game as NHL 14, just like I said, with a roster update. And I think they definitely could have used an extra year of development time to get it to a better state. But moving on to NHL 16, I'm going to throw that in the poor category here. And I think NHL 16, it kind of launched closer to where NHL 15 should have been right away. In the Wikipedia there, it mentions like the additions of Be a Pro, Be a GM. Be a GM was in 15, it was so stripped down, and just it really didn't exist in 15, let's be honest. But yeah, I don't know. NHL 15 and 16 were definitely more of a letdown for me personally. One good thing here that those two games actually did have was they had the NHL and NBC broadcasting package or whatever for the presentation, which a lot of people loved and want to see brought back. So from those two games, that's one positive, but these two games were just very, very poor, and it wasn't a great transition to the next gen of consoles back in the day. And personally, I just really don't remember really having any fun with these games. But moving on to NHL 17, and I'm going to put NHL 17 in the good category. I really did enjoy my time with NHL 17. This was a huge, huge year for the offline players. As for franchise mode, you could now go and relocate a team. I remember seeing the trailers growing up when I was younger, and I was just so hyped in seeing all the different options you had. You can customize your team store, you had owner mode, there was just so much you could actually do. It also brought in the arena creator. You could really just kind of tie that to whatever city and team and all that stuff you were moving your team to. And I think it just helped really give franchise mode and some of those offline modes some of the more customization that was needed. And I just remember just having a lot of genuine fun on this game. But moving on to NHL 18 here, I'm going to go probably in the average. It seemed kind of like an NHL 17 2.0, a little bit more to me here. You did have the expansion draft. This also was the year that they really focused on the threes, as the NHL overtime format had been switched to that. So they're having game modes and all that stuff more or less just around that, which I never really played too much, to be honest. NHL 18 was kind of a year when I was kind of slowly getting out of the NHL games a little bit and was a little bit more fatigued with the franchise just as a whole. It wasn't bad or anything, but I think it was just, just a very average NHL game, if I'm being honest. But let's move on to NHL 19 here, and I'm going to put this one also in the good category. Another huge year for franchise mode and offline modes, as scouting, the draft, you had Fog of War. There was a ton of additions here in NHL 19. And funny enough, NHL 19 was probably the game of all these games that I played the least. Like I just said, I was kind of a little bit tired of the series as a whole from NHL 18 to 19, but just looking back on it and the changes that were actually implemented in this year's game, I don't know how you can't have it in a good category. Now, even just watching franchise modes and stuff back from NHL 19, it did look like a pretty solid game for the EA NHL series. But let's continue on here and move to NHL 20, which I'll probably once again go on average. You could almost argue putting it in the good category, as it was probably the last, really decent year we got for the offline modes when it comes to franchise mode and stuff like that. This is when I believe you saw coaching and line chemistry added in. You also had the trade finder, and you also had just, a ton of quality of life changes that, had been needed and had been asked for many years at that point. I don't know, just when it comes to NHL 20, I don't remember having a ton of fun with it. I don't remember playing it, a crazy amount, but I think it's a good average NHL game. I think it took some steps forward, but I don't know if it's amazing. And same thing kind of goes with NHL 21. You did get the huge Be a Pro update in this year's game. You also got the NHL trade deadline feature added in to franchise mode. And this was a decent year once again, but you're kind of getting into that copy and paste cycle at this point. If you're a Be a Pro player, awesome. This would be a huge year for you. You probably have it in great. And I'm not saying that I hated the trade deadline minigame or anything like that. I think it was really solid and a great addition. But outside of that, nothing else was really changed. And I think it was another good step in the direction of franchise mode and all that stuff. But I think overall it should just probably go down as an average NHL game from this point. But moving on to 22, I want poor average. I'll probably go average once again here. This was the first year that we saw X Factors added into the game. It was also the first year that the NHL series went to the Frostbite engine. And honestly, when X Factors were first announced, I really was not a fan at all. I really thought that this was going to be a total waste of a development year. I was thinking that, they're not going to matter. It's just, whatever. It's just kind of an arcadey thing. But I honestly, the more time has gone on, I really do think the addition of X Factors was a very good play for the NHL series. And you also had the roster sharing feature added in this year's game. But outside of those two things, is there really anything that crazy with NHL 22? I'm going to go probably not. NHL 23, I'm putting in poor. It was just kind of a slog to get through NHL 23, if I'm being honest. It's the first year I started uploading YouTube content around these games. Started making rosters the year prior to that, but there just wasn't really much here. Like in offline modes, you had the presentation update, which, it was nice. You had custom leagues added in, which is good, but, there's a lot of other things I would have seen other than that. You also had the cross-console, ability, which wasn't fully introduced until NHL 24. It was just a very, very not great game in my opinion. But NHL 24, I'm going to go and put that in average once again. Step up from 23. I really did like what they did with the pressure system, the goalie fatigue, and all their new kind of gameplay improvements that they tried to add in. I know that, especially at the start of the year, a lot of these things were broken and it really didn't work as it was supposed to. But honestly, I'm really glad that they, were trying to at least put those steps in to make the gameplay actually feel different for the first time in, almost 10 years. I did appreciate that overall. It did suck toward the end of the year, all these changes were really phased out. So really, what was the point of the whole development cycle around this year's game? You can really kind of question that at this point, but I did like that they at least tried to make those changes. But I think that is going to do it for today's video and my tier list on all the NHL games since NHL 15. Definitely let me know, where would you guys slot some of these games in? I'm curious to see some of your ratings and memories from these games. But that'll do it for today's video. I will see you all in the next one.